Hello, so great to connect with you again this week. I really hope that you had a fabulous weekend. I did have an amazing one. I got a lot accomplished on the weekend, so this week I sort of feel like I've been able to start the week feeling a little bit more accomplished than I suppose previous weeks, mainly because I got to redo my daughter's bedroom and really set her up so that she's got the best start to her new school year. And by getting out and decluttering all of the old things in her room, it actually just helped me to, I suppose, declutter my mind and looking at those things going, I need to do that every time I look at the room. So now that I see her room, I see that I've accomplished it and I'm feeling really good with that. Hi Kim, hi Angela, so good to see you here. So today I just wanted to touch base and I suppose discuss some chronic inflammation. What is it? What can you do about it? I've had a few people lately message me through Facebook and say, look, we need to know a little bit more about Facebook. So today I thought, not about Facebook, about chronic inflammation. So today I really thought that I would jump on, speak a little bit about the basics of chronic inflammation. It is actually quite involved and there is a lot to it. But let's talk about what you can do, how you can start to look at things. So I'm Teresa Todd. I'm a naturopath, biochemist, microbiologist, and author of The Energy Solution. And I love helping people with their conditions and their health. I love helping them to understand what's going on. And that's what I want to express today, is just to get an understanding of what is going on, what's driving your ill health, and what you can do to help fix all of that and get you back on track. So what is chronic inflammation? It's inflammation in the body should be acute. It should be, okay, you've cut your finger, we want to mobilize the white blood cells to eliminate any bacteria or any other pathogens that might be in the cut. We want to mobilize the healing resources of the body so that we can heal and we can grow new tissue and skin connective tissue over that cut so we can run some healing processes. That's what inflammation is. It's the driving processes that enable our body to heal itself. And when it's acute, like in a cut finger or a bump on the leg, something like that, it's acute, it's got a finite amount of time, the body does an amazing job of healing itself. But what happens when it goes on and on and on? And so the analogy that I'm going to use for this is a bit pertinent, considering that we've got these massive bushfires happening in Australia at the moment and they've been going for such a long time. For some of these bushfires started back in August last year, so we're talking like 5 months we're going into now for some of these bushfires. But let's talk in chronic inflammation in the terms of the bushfire. So what should normally happen during the winter months in the lead up to summer? The Rural Fire Brigade, they go out and they do backburning. So they light a few fires of their own with the aim of getting rid of all of the debris, the old dense undergrowth, really clearing it out so that the new growth can come on through. And so that happens usually in the winter months and the lead up to summer to control bushfires. At the moment, they haven't, due to lots of different other reasons, and that's a whole political football on its own, but it hasn't been done probably like it has previously, and it's been so dry and their season for them to do it is a lot shorter, so they really can't get out there and do that probably as much as they would have liked to. So what's happened now is the fire has got so much fuel and so much ability to take off and to go over hectares and hectares of Australia, and it's hard to control. So think about chronic inflammation in your body in terms of that there has been something that set off the inflammation in your body and your body has not been able to control it and make it short-lived, and that it's continued and continued. And as it continues, there's a lot of destruction of tissues. There is a lot of there's a lot of utilization of nutrients in your body. And when it happens over months, years, it starts to create chronic disease. And the chronic disease can be things like heart disease, cancer, neurological conditions such as dementia, multiple sclerosis. So all of these conditions, we're also looking at autoimmune conditions. Most of the autoimmune conditions have some kind of underlying chronic inflammation going on. diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is also another inflammatory process that's going on that's uncontrolled. So if you've got any form of chronic illness, then that's actually that's got chronic inflammation underlying that. And to get rid of the chronic illness, we need to address the chronic inflammation that's going on. Hi Sarika, great to see you. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. So good to see you on. So what are the symptoms of chronic inflammation? They're quite broad. So it could be brain fog. It could be low-grade chronic fevers. So in particular in the last week or so, I've had a lot of clients come in where they go, you know what, my body temperature is just slightly above what it should be. One of my clients, her body temperature was running at 37.8, which for her is quite high as a resting body temperature. That's a little bit higher than it is, and from her history, she knows that whenever her body temperature gets up, she is fighting something in the body and her inflammation processes are going up. Hi Carla, great to see you. Sharika, you will have to catch up with this. Okay, that's good, great to see you there. So the other symptoms of chronic inflammation is generalized body pain, pains that move around the body, or aches that stay there for a long period of time. So like I said, the brain fog, you can also get the constant fatigue. So a lot of the chronic fatigue type of situations and the fibromyalgia situations have the chronic inflammation that is just hard to get established and to get on top of. Depression, anxiety, mood swings, those kinds of things can be an indicator of some kind of chronic inflammatory response going on. Weight gain, but particularly weight gain around your abdomen. So fat stores actually tend to create inflammatory chemicals, and part of that is when you start to increase your fat stores, it can say that it can indicate that there's an inflammatory reaction going on, but it can also be that it's fueling this fire that's going on with you. Sureka, I'm glad we've got that under that. That's much better. I'm glad you pronounced that for me, Sureka. Thank you so much. Frequent infections. So if you're constantly getting infections, you're constantly getting colds or flus, the things that are going around, even urinary tract infections, those kinds of chronic infections or recurrent infections that are going on tend to indicate that there's some kind of chronic inflammation happening. But also digestive issues, so constipation, diarrhea, reflux, bloating, the digestive pains. So you might get the little colicky kinds of pains, and they can also tend to indicate that there's an issue or a chronic inflammatory response going on. Skin rashes. Have you got any skin rashes that just don't go away? Recurrency of hives, eczema, psoriasis, all of that can indicate that there's a chronic inflammatory response going on. But also allergies. So with the extra smoke and the smoke haze that's around, there's a lot more allergy response going on, and that can also trigger some kind of, or the ability for the body to create that chronic inflammatory response. So these are all symptoms that if you've got a lot of them or if you've got a few of them, start to have a look at, is there chronic inflammation that's fueling this? Is it starting to fuel itself and to create its own chemical reactions inside the body? So to find out, there are tests that can be done. You can go to a GP, your local doctor, and you can get tests like ESR and CRP done. However, they're not as sensitive. Sometimes when we're in the beginnings of the chronic inflammation, it's not as sensitive as it should be. And I've even got some clients who are they've had chronic inflammation for a long time and their CRP is still deemed to be within the normal range. However, you can see that it fluctuates a lot. Sarika, Tracy, mention MS. Something here might resonate. So multiple sclerosis is definitely related to the chronic inflammation, and a lot of the damage that gets done to the nerves does come back to that chronic inflammatory response. And so for those of you that know about my history with my husband, he has got MS, and it is very much a daily thing of we're always working to reduce that chronic inflammation that's going on with him, to really down regulate and to help him with his symptoms and to get him to feel much better with it all. So what's the causes of chronic inflammation? One of the big ones that I always see is that there is a recurrency of infection. So there's some kind of infective agent that may not have been resolved correctly. So previously I've talked about stealth infections, things like Epstein-Barr virus, Ross River fever, glandular fever, Lyme's, all of those kinds of infective agents actually can linger in the body and create a chronic inflammatory response. But also parasites can as well. So if there's parasites in the digestive system, that can actually create a chronic inflammatory response. And I've had one beautiful client who was only 12 years old, picked up a parasite in barley, a gut parasite, and it actually contributed to turning on her autoimmune condition that she ended up getting. Thankfully, we've been able to resolve that, and a lot of her symptoms are going by the wayside, which is fabulous to see. But it can just indicate that any kind of infective agent can actually trigger chronic inflammation, and that can then trigger or cause a lot of the chronic diseases that are going on. So if you've ever had Epstein-Barr or glandular fever, Ross River fever, any of those kinds of viral infections, but it's also things like cold sores. So a lot of clients come in and they've got a recurrency of cold sores, and it's that recurrency that can go on that's just undermining the system and creating that inflammatory response. So looking at, is there a particular infective agent? Investigate what's going on in your body with that. But also niggling injuries. So I've got a few clients that are athletes and they're doing a lot of exercise. So these athletes are on the professional scale, and they tend to do hours of exercise, and they get niggling injuries. And that exercise in itself stimulates some of the inflammatory pathways in the body. So looking at your exercise, do you have any niggling injuries that you're just going, oh look, I've got some knee pain, don't worry, what's the old adage, for training, pain is pleasure. So when a lot of gyms like to say, if you're in pain, that's a good thing, but it's not always a good thing if there's a chronic inflammatory response going on underneath. Hi Emma, hi Elise, great to see you there. And Naomi, so good to catch up with you here. So any form of niggling injuries that you have that are just constantly causing you a little bit of pain, that pain is an indicator of an inflammatory reaction going on underneath. Dysbiosis. So before I said about parasites can be related to creating a chronic inflammatory response. Well, dysbiosis of the gut. So when there's an imbalance of bacteria levels of the digestive system, that can actually trigger some chronic inflammatory responses. And we know from a genetic point of view that the types of bacteria in the digestive system actually talk to our genes and actually can turn on or turn off our inflammatory responses at the genetic level. So when I do some gene testing with my clients, we have a look at the genes that they've got, the inflammatory genes, and see if there's an issue with the effectiveness of those genes. And from that, we know that there's certain probiotics that we can use to actually turn on or turn off some of those genes to help them with their inflammatory response. Hi Anne-Marie, great to see you there. And just Jepasina, it's great to see you all there. So dysbiosis, so really making sure that you've got the good levels of bacteria in the digestive system. That's going to be a great way of controlling chronic inflammation in the body. So before I also spoke about exercise, if you're over-exercising in general, so some clients at this time of the year, it's New Year's resolutions, let's get out there and let's start exercising. We haven't exercised for 6 months, but that's okay. We're going to hit the gym for five times this week. And that exercise from not doing much at all to starting a big exercise regime will actually throw you into an inflammatory response. A chemical called interleukin-6 is made by the... A chemical called interleukin-6 is made by the muscles when they're exerted, and that interleukin-6 can actually create an inflammatory response in the body for those who are already susceptible to it. So if you're going to start, if your New Year's resolution is let's start exercise, start slowly. Allow your body time to recuperate with exercise. And if you are exercising and you want to step it to the next level, again, allow your body to have some days off in between to allow that recuperation of the muscles there. Hi Debbie, hi Kate, great to see you there. So the typical things in lifestyle of alcohol, stress, coffee, sugar, all of those can actually trigger an inflammatory response in the body as well. So looking at our lifestyle, looking at what we're doing with our life and how that our lifestyle talks to our genes. Because that's the biggest thing with inflammation, or with how the body runs, but particularly with inflammation. Your diet and your lifestyle are the two things that you're doing that will talk to your genes, and then your genes will be turned on or off depending on which gene we're looking at, and those genes will then create an inflammatory response. So diet and lifestyles are very important to help. It's the crux to help you with your inflammation in your body. So looking at that, what foods can you use to reduce inflammation? So foods like cooked tomatoes, cooked onions, they're both great at creating, giving the body these chemicals such as quercetin and other lycopenes and those kinds of things that actually help to turn off the inflammatory response in the body. You've got other foods like turmeric, ginger, cinnamon. They're all great to actually help to be anti-inflammatory. So is pineapple, so is pawpaw. These foods you can put into your diet on a daily basis to help reduce inflammation in the body. And then you've got the oils such as the olive oil. And that's why the Mediterranean diet is deemed to be such a good anti-inflammatory diet, because the Mediterranean diet has a lot of plant-based foods and a lot of olive oil. And so the plant-based foods and the olive oil actually talk to the body and help to reduce the inflammatory processes in the body. Then you've got other oils like your hemp seed oil, your flaxseed oil. They're all deemed to be great anti-inflammatory foods, and you can pop them I pop them into my smoothie and have them on a regular basis so that they're part of my everyday program. Then you've got things like fish oils, so the oils from the fish, from the deep sea fish, the salmon, so usually it's the salmon the best, because tuna can be contaminated with the heavy metals, so salmon oil is always a little bit better, but the fish oils, having some deep sea fish in your diet occasionally will help to talk to those genes again to help to reduce your inflammation. You've also got broccoli. So using broccoli in your diet is also going to help. But once you cook broccoli, we tend to lose a few of the ingredients that we need. So when you have cooked broccoli, add mustard to it. And that will then amplify the sulforaphane that's there to help talk to the genes again. Otherwise, use broccoli in salads so that it's more raw, or use broccoli sprouts, broccolini, these kinds of things that you can use in your everyday salads for summer, and they're a great way to keep the anti-inflammatory action going in the body. Hi Linda, great to see you there. So berries and cherries. So we're in the season of summer, so cherries here are quite abundant. They're great for that. You can also use berries. I tend to use the frozen berries to make sure that they're not in the heat, particularly the humidity that we've got going on here at the Gold Coast. Sometimes the berries can go off pretty quickly, so I tend to use the frozen berries, and that way I make sure that all the antioxidant nutrients that I'm looking at are there frozen in the organic berries that I'm using. So these foods, having a plant-based diet that's based around all of your plants, but particularly those herbs and spices like the turmerics, the garlics, the gingers, the cooked onions, all of those plant-based foods are actually going to talk to your genes and help to reduce down the inflammation that's going on. And in doing so, then looking at reducing foods that are going to create inflammation. So red meats can actually stimulate a lot of inflammation. So really, if you're in a chronically inflamed situation, reducing your red meats as much as you can, if not eliminating them, and sticking to that plant-based diet is much better for your inflammatory response. Looking at reducing the sugar, the coffee, the processed foods, the refined foods, so particularly the white breads, the pastas, those kinds of refined carbohydrates will also stimulate an inflammatory response. Anything that's fried, so fried foods, your chips, your fried fish, those kinds of fried foods, those fats are actually quite inflammatory for us as well as anything of the frozen variety, so the frozen pastries that's got a lot of the trans fats in there. It's the trans fats that will also contribute to the chronic inflammatory response. So keeping it simple, we're looking at reducing anything that's processed, really. Increasing anything that's natural, so your salad, fruits and the veggies. Increasing those plant-based foods into your diet to help to communicate with the bacterial levels of the digestive system to then communicate with the genes that are inside your body. And including things like the avocados, the nuts, the oils. So that's the one thing I didn't mention before. Nuts, particularly walnuts, macadamias, are absolutely brilliant to help with the anti-inflammatory process, and so is avocado. So using the nuts and the seeds in your salads, have them in a smoothie, have them as a snack, create a beautiful health bar that's a bit like a muesli bar with all these beautiful seeds and some chopped up nuts in there. Great way to have as a snack during the day. And you could also put some dried, like if you were to make up a health bar, you could put some dried cherries in there. And the dried cherries will give you a bit of that sweetness that you're wanting, but it will also give you the anti-inflammatory properties as well. Debbie, oh, thanks, Deb. So good to see you, hun. So, hi, Ara. And Anita, we've got a few people jumping on today, so I really hope that you've been able to get some information from this. So the whole point is that chronic inflammation is driving a lot of the chronic illnesses. We need to control the chronic inflammation, and by doing that, look at your lifestyle, look at your diet. What are you eating and what are you doing in your daily grind? That's not a very nice word, but your daily life. What are you doing that's contributing? Are you quite stressed? Are you having a lot of alcohol, smoking, drinking lots of coffee, and wondering why you've got a lot of body aches and pains? Have a look at what your lifestyle is doing and what you're eating and how that's contributing to the chronic inflammation. Because when you can downregulate your chronic inflammation, you can actually help to reduce the symptoms of any disease conditions around. And generally when we get rid of the chronic inflammatory responses, we can actually reverse a lot of the chronic illnesses that are going on, particularly the autoimmune conditions. So looking at what you're doing in your life, put in those foods that I've spoken about. Go back and listen to this again and look at all those foods that I spoke about to put into your lifestyle. Look into the Mediterranean diet. Stick with a plant-based diet that's mainly based around your plant foods as 80% of your foods. Have a little bit of chicken and fish, maybe making sure that the chicken hasn't got a lot of hormones added to it. Maybe going for some nuts and seeds as your protein source instead. And that way you're getting that anti-inflammatory response again. So I hope I've been able to help you and guide you to help reduce your chronic inflammation. I look forward to hearing from you. Please add some comments. Comment below to tell me how you're going and what you've been doing. I really look forward to hearing how you progress with this and how you can put this into your life. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.